Kasiran ko. Wala ko kung ano pang kailangan. Hindi yung nakukuha. Kung hindi kailangan, yung nakukuha.
Bakit ba?
Bumabangga ka, nakita ko
Kasi
yun.
binangga mo. Binangga
Tumayo
kita.
tuloy bigla.
Binangga kita.
Oo.
Laki mo nga, babangga kita. Dahil ako natorsit.
Kahanap ko na yung next master ko.
Nung una pa lang, nakita na ni Ginny ang kasulangan at pangangailangan ni Galoy.
Hi, master!
Hirap pa kasi makahuli ng isda si Kaloy. Hindi pa siya kasing
Napadala natin si CNN.
Hanapin mo yung control.
Hawak yun. Kailan naman naglilipat dyan eh.
Wala naglipat yan eh.
Kanina pa yun, wala na.
Pagkagina pa nga yun eh. Saan nilagay? O ito. Tataas mo yun.
Speaking out against the violence. So there's this really careful balancing act, right, between having that rage and putting it out there, but also not losing control of the message. And I think that's what we see people struggling with right now.
And then helping with that very struggle, because as John mentions Ferguson, I remember being in Los Angeles in the days after the riots, the verdicts, the police reading, and then the verdicts in that case there. We could talk about the 60s, we could talk about the 90s, we can talk about in Georgia just a couple of months ago. What you're seeing is, my question on this Sunday is, where is the circuit breaker? How do you convince these people with justifiable historic anger, you need to step back, you're doing more harm than good?
Well, let me just point out, there are 40 million African Americans.
Yung kurente, nakamas eh. Sila nakamas.
Every one of us heartbroken, every one of us just destroyed because we don't know what to tell our children now. The reason this is different, the reason this is just broken our heart, this is not the same as the others. There's some things that they're similar. What's different is there's nothing you can tell your child that would protect them from this outcome. It's like, don't run, don't talk back, don't have drugs on you, don't have a weapon on you. None of that would have saved this man. None of this would have saved our child. So that's why you see this heartbreak. But with 40 million African Americans, 99.9999999% of us, heartbroken that we are still peaceful. And we're still expecting the government to do something and are on the internet and are calling friends and family or trying to push our government. So let's not forget, we're talking about a tiny, tiny percentage of people, number one. Number two, we don't know who's setting these fires. There's reports that some of this stuff seems to be coordinated not by African Americans, not by people from even the communities that you're talking about. So something's going on here. That said, there are two pathways now for America. We could be headed toward not these little small disturbances, but towards civil unrest. We're about one video away from possible civil unrest in 10, 15 American cities. So that's one pathway. The other pathway is simply this. You can have bipartisan police reform in the United States within weeks. If people would act aggressively, you could have a major economic investment. If the corporations that are concerned would step up, write checks, convene people, figure out how you could actually get more help and more hope to these communities. And you could also have these 4 officers charged and facing real time. If you move in the direction of justice, economic opportunity, and bipartisan police reform, you could have a breakthrough and be better off by the end of the summer. If you don't, we're going to have a breakdown, and I have no idea where you end up with civil unrest across the United States. That's where we're headed.
And that last part is the hard part. We have no idea because of this. To the point, John Allen, to the point Van was just making, there are a lot of people pointing fingers right now, which is a difficulty in and already difficult moment. I want you to listen here. This is the Attorney General of the United States saying that there are left-wing activists, in his view, causing a problem.
In many places, it appears the violence is planned, organized, and driven by anarchic and left extremist groups, far left extremist groups, using Antifa-like tactics. We must have law and order on our streets and in our communities.
I think it's important for all of us, and I know the reporters on the ground are doing this, to pursue the actual facts of what is happening. A message like that from the Justice Department of Washington in the middle of this, I'm going to assume, will not be interpreted on the black street, whether it's Minneapolis or any other American city, as terribly helpful.
Yeah, I think certainly the first point is that what Dan made is that, we don't exactly know who's saying these, so it's and I was kind of chuckle when, people in Washington or political folks talk about, it's a left-wing person doing this, it's a right-wing person doing this. I think at this point it's kind of hard to tell that, and I think for the cause at hand,
May electric pa naman, di ba?
people are being killed on the streets, it's not about a left or right issue, and I think people often talk about those terms, and I'll just speak to, this level of anger. I remember the first night that I got here, I went to the 3rd precinct, the 3rd police precinct, and this is after it burned down. And I was talking to some young individuals out there who were leaving, and I said, what do you all think about destruction and whatnot? And they're like, it's not something that, we actually want to see our community burn down, but like, listen, we've tried kneeling, we've tried being quiet, we've tried doing this, in some very peaceful way, but like, what are we at? Where have we got this? And this is maybe what it takes.
Hindi, nadulutin na nga sila eh.
And that makes me think back again to Ferguson. If that quick hadn't burned, whether we like to admit this or not, there's a chance that a lot of media and a lot of attention would not have gone there. Because there was that
Yan naman, lumang video yan. Kahapon pa yan.
And after that, you saw a flood of media and a flood of attention, And in some ways, for better or worse, that has been the MO. Like, the attention of the nation focused on these things when there's a lot of unrest. Now, the question again is, how do you then kind of channel that unrest, that rage, then into being about the message, and don't let that unrest overtake them.
And Omar, jump in on that point, because in the week you have had there, including your own, you've been taken into custody for a while. You cannot ignore the pictures of the unrest. You cannot ignore things burning and more violence. But we also must not ignore the protester who played at the top of the show that Miguel Marquez, our colleague, spoke to last night. Just talking about, I want to be able to drive in a car, and if a cop pulls in behind me, pulls in the lane behind me, I don't want to have to cringe. I don't want to be afraid. As the man just talked about, what do you tell your children?
Well, and that's something that the governor has spoken on whenever he comes up in these press conferences. Specifically, I think back, to a few days ago during his press conference when he tried to lay out what a pathway forward would look like. And he said it started with restoring order, which I think we saw glimpses of last night. But then he said it's going to move then towards trying to get swift justice, which we have not seen either a decision for or against charges for all 4 of these officers. And the last one he said is going to come down to rebuilding trust. And he said trust that was not just frayed over the course of this week, but trust that has been frayed over the course of generations between law enforcement and some of these communities here. And when you look at how this particular case unfolded, this played out on camera. This played out in front of witnesses who were pleading with officers to stop what they were doing because they could visibly see this person was losing consciousness or at least becoming less responsive. And so to have an example like that, this goes back a little bit to what Dan was talking about. A lot of people here don't know what to tell their kids or their family or their friends to do and interact with police officers. Because while that interaction may not represent every single police officer in the Minneapolis Police Department, it does represent the department by being one of them. And so that, I think, sticks with a lot of people, and it will extend way beyond this week, and it will be an uphill battle for people here at Clyde.
All right, if you look at the history of the department, that particular department has a long history of trouble that many in the community, as you so well reported, do not believe has been dealt with appropriately. Omar Jimenez, thank you. John and Van are going to stay with us for future conversations. Up next, President Trump weighs in on this unrest, urging Minnesota leaders to get tougher and to restore law and order.
And now, a moment of wonder from Great Big Story by B. Grimm.
It's very important for young Thai kids, any kids, to be curious and ask questions. We're celebrating 10 years of the Little Scientist House program in Thailand.
เริ่มแรกเลยเด็กเกิดความสงสัย
เขาให้พวกเราประดิษฐ์เพื่อแจกของสนุก
Ay, nako
To
po.
become scientists of tomorrow, it's important to encourage kids to ask questions today. Our hope is to reach all schools in Thailand to help children become scientists of the future.
ก็คืออยากเป็นนักวิทยาศาสตร์ค่ะ
For more like this, visit greatbigstory.com.
As the global economy adjusts to life in lockdown, many businesses are seeking ways to support the fight against COVID-19. With bars in lockdown, AB InBev, the brewery behind Budweiser, is now focusing on how it can support those on the front line. The company is manufacturing and donating over 1 million bottles of hand sanitizer to affected areas across the globe. Meanwhile, Canada Goose has been producing clothing to protect frontline healthcare workers. The brand is manufacturing and donating 14,000 medical scrubs and gowns to hospitals in Canada. It is manufacturing another 1.5 million hospital gowns at cost. And as the African continent braces for the onset of COVID-19, United Bank for Africa commits $14 million through their foundation to help prevent the spread of the disease. For more stories of the people making a difference and to find out how you can impact your world, go to cnn.com/impact.
updates in your inbox. Sign up for the CNN newsletter. Coronavirus, fact versus fiction.
Welcome to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. We're going to begin with the politics lead, and one of the biggest bombshells today, the straight talk you need. That seems to be, to me, completely contradicting from your man in Washington. It's all food for thought when you and the public are trying to decide who to trust. He won't back down. We're getting a new look at the headwinds that congressional Republicans already are facing. A monumental day in our politics. The Lead with Jake Tapper, Tuesday through Saturday on CNN.
The president's reflex is conflict, even at moments that scream for calm or compassion. After midnight, as Thursday turned to Friday, the chaos in Minnesota caught the president's attention. Quote, "When the looting starts, the shooting starts," he tweeted. On Saturday, the president criticized Minnesota leaders as too soft and said he would restore order.
They've got to be tough, they've got to be strong, they've got to be respected. Because these people, it's Antifa, it's a lot of radical left bad people. And they've got to be taught that you can't do this. We cannot and must not allow a small group of criminals and vandals to wreck our cities and lay waste to our communities. My administration will stop mob violence, and we'll stop it cold.
This unrest is playing out not only in the middle of a pandemic, but now 5 months from a presidential election. In a statement Saturday night, as many protests turned violent, the Democratic candidate Joe Biden issued a statement saying, "We are a nation in pain, but we must not allow this pain to destroy us. We are a nation enraged, but we cannot allow our rage to consume us. We are a nation exhausted, but we will not allow our exhaustion to defeat us." On Friday, the former vice president said he had spoken with George Floyd's family.
We're a country with an open wound. It's time for us to take a hard look at the uncomfortable truths. It's time for us to face that deep open wound we have in this nation. We need justice for George Floyd.
Oloranipa with the Washington Post joins us, and still with us, John Elligon, national correspondent for the New York Times. Totally to the point I was making about the president, his reflex is combat and conflict. It seems at times in the middle of this, out of touch.
Right, the nation is crying out for comfort, consolation, for direction and guidance, and the president seems to be very much focused on being the law and order president, being tough, really even glorifying in the fact that the Secret Service was getting into fights and scuffles with protesters outside the White House, saying he felt very safe, and he was watching the entire night a couple nights ago when things got pretty violent outside the White House. We are seeing a president who has really glorified in the fact that he believes he is a tough law and order president. He is not speaking to some of these broader systemic issues. Just a couple of months ago, we thought this election was going to be all about the economy. Then it changed, and it seemed like it was all going to be about the coronavirus and the pandemic. Now it seems like racial violence, racial tension, police brutality is going to be a key part of the election. And it seems like these two candidates, President Trump and former President Joe Biden, are taking completely different approaches, with President Trump really wanting to crack down on protesters, sort of saying this is all about Antifa and anti-government, anti-American protests instead of the broader systemic issues that a lot of these protesters are talking about. Although Biden does appear to be speaking to some of those broader issues, trying to start a national conversation over the issues that many protesters are taking to the street over. It just really remains to be seen how the country is going to respond to that, and whether or not President Trump's law and order approach is going to have the same impact that it did have 4 years ago when he was able to take that approach and convince a lot of voters to give him a shot at being the president.
And John Elligon, we know from the polling, President Trump doesn't have much political standing in the African American community. But my question is a little bit more broad in the sense of, is there any trust, especially among the younger African American community, as they see the former vice president trying to strike an empathy note at a time the president sounds more, if you look, he said he didn't know that when the looting starts, the shooting starts, came from a racist Miami police chief back in the 60s. Law and order has echoes of Richard Nixon or George Wallace. But I think the broader question is, as you travel the country and cover this issue, is there trust for any politician?
Things are already so tense now, especially among African Americans. When you talk about the coronavirus and the disproportionate impact on Black communities, you talk about now this and the open wounds that this is revealed, and people are so on edge that, however, and whoever addresses this needs to come at this in a way that shows an understanding, not just a depth of understanding, but a depth of problem solving. I think there's a frustration, there's a level that we don't just want, and this is what I hear from a lot of Black people I talk to, that we don't just want someone who's going to tell us what we want to hear, and then not follow it up with action. And in some ways you see that in Minneapolis. I mean, it's a mostly white city, but it's also very politically progressive. People talk about racial justice a lot and racial injustices, and yet they still have the largest inequalities when it comes to Black and white people here, larger than many other big cities. So that this place is in some ways a microcosm of that issue of, we don't just want people to tell us what we want to hear, but we also want something done. And I think for Joe Biden, it's going to be very key that he comes in and doesn't just say, vote for me because, I served under the first Black president, or because I'm a Democrat. It's going to be very key that he comes in and says what he wants to do and what he wants to do for the community. And I think Trump, his pitch to Black America has always been, look at the strong economy, and now we see that that's in trouble. We see that that's in
I think John's shot froze up there. Totally. Back to you in the sound. I'm sorry. Did we get it back? All right, we're trying to work on that. Total.